We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Action Comics number 528. This is from the original series from DC Comics. Now I do have to admit that I read this issue after I read 529. So I already kind of know what happens in the next issue, but it took me a little longer to track this one down. And this issue was written by Marv Wolfman with Curt Swan as penciler. Frank Chiaramonte was the inker, Todd Klein letters, Gene D'Angelo on colors, and Julius Schwartz editor. First of all, this cover is awesome. Now at this point in Superman's history, Brainiac is a good guy. He had been reprogrammed a while ago by Superman so that they could be friends, and Brainiac is trying to go out and correct for all his misdeeds, including reprogramming robots of himself on a planet called Kordos that his robo-duplicates were subjugating the planet. Then he also destroyed this thing that was blocking the sun, and he finally gets around to this machine that he thought he had disabled a long time ago because it actually frightened him when he was evil, because it was a self-replicating machine that would become more powerful as it absorbed more energy. And now it's the size of a small planet. It's very much like Unicron from the Transformers stories. In order to stop it, Brainiac has to go get Superman. Superman's a little confused at first because he thinks maybe Brainiac's attacking, but they end up coming to terms with the fact this thing is destroying planets, and Superman is unable to stop it from destroying a planet, and he has to watch this thing get annihilated in front of his eyes, and it's very traumatic for him because of what happened to Krypton, and he felt very powerless. Well, he goes out to try and stop it while it's in its rest cycle, but that doesn't work, and it attacks Superman and hurls him across the spaceways, and that leaves Brainiac in kind of a tough spot. Plus, it looks like the Daily Planet may be getting sold off from Galaxy because it's not that profitable, and we're left with a cliffhanger ending. Then we have a backup story called Landmasters of the Sea, which is an Aquaman story written by Bob Rosaski, Alex Savuk on pencils, Frank Chiaramonte inks, Phil Felix letterer, Tom Zucchio colorist, and Julius Schwartz editor. It turns out that Airwave and Green Lantern are helping Aquaman return this alien to its home planet, and Airwave had done something with this alien probably last issue, but I don't have that one. And Aquaman finds out that he can telepathically communicate with these squid aliens called Hexapus, but if he talks at them too much with his psychic vibration thing that he communicates to fishies with, then it actually can stun them. And while they're kind of showing him around, that sort of thing, he comes across these beings called the Landmasters, and they have come underwater to attack these creatures. And we're left with a cliffhanger ending there. That was a good story, actually. That would have made a good Adventure Comics issue, but the main story was fine. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's definitely aimed at like middle to high school kids, but it's good Silver Age Superman, and the fact that it's a multi-part story is actually kind of rare for Silver Age, but around this time, late 70s, early 80s, they were doing much more of the long-form serialized storytelling. So it's a good Brainiac story and a good Superman story with this giant Planet of Doom kind of thing. And for 1982, this was pretty good stuff. So I would absolutely recommend this. I picked this up for about $3, and I think it's worth that. It was an entertaining read. It's a little bit dated in the way some people talk, and there's some cultural references that are a bit dated, like TV and movie stars, but that's normal with older comics. But I think a kid could pick this up and read it and be entertained by it. It's not as unrealistic as some of the older stuff from the early Silver Age or the Golden Age, but definitely worth a check. So if you like the Silver Age Superman stuff, then you'll probably like this, or if you know a younger reader and you want them to read a Superman comic, this isn't a bad choice, but it is a 3-part story, so be aware of that. So all around a great book with an awesome cover. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, share the video on your social media, pick yourself something up nice from the merch store. You can support me on Patreon or do a donation via Streamlabs, which accepts PayPal. All those links are in the description, and as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Action Comics number 529. As you could guess, this is from the first volume, which started in 1938. This issue is from 1982. It is written by Marv Wolfman, pencils by Curt Swan, inks by Dan Adkins, letters by Ben Oda. Colorist was G. D'Angelo, edited by Julius Schwartz. The cover was by Perez and Giordano, and it's a good cover. It does get you hooked in there. And we do have a backup story with Aquaman. We'll get to that in a moment. First First, we've got Brainiac flying through space, trying to stop a doomsday machine that he built back when he was evil. And he's been reprogrammed for good, but that doesn't mean much, because this world-eating machine is quickly destroying civilizations. He's able to save a city, much like he did with Kandor, by shrinking it down. But Superman is back on Earth and doesn't know what's going on. He's very confused as to how he got at Lois's apartment, and he doesn't remember the events of last issue, where he apparently had faced this doomsday machine in that issue. It sounds like him and Brainiac got defeated by this world-eating machine, which reprogrammed itself and is now fully on evil, much like Brainiac was. But whatever it did to Superman has made him oblivious to signs of its coming, like earthquakes and volcanoes and water spouts. So Jimmy Olsen has to suit up and go out and try and help Superman. Lois wants to too, but he said nope, he cares too much about her and he wants her to stay behind. She says that's chauvinist, immediately puts herself in danger because she's not real bright, I guess. So with Jimmy directing Superman, he's got to save some people, put out these water spouts, which he does with his superpowers. And like I said, he has to save Lois, and then Brainiac shows up, but is Brainiac gonna stay for good or evil? Because Superman may have to reprogram him in order to find the flaw in this device. So good Brainiac may no longer exist after this issue, but it is continued to a third part. But overall, it was a pretty decent story. A lot happens, there's a lot of action. Superman has to save Lois, which he does comment is becoming a full-time profession. He does have to deal with Brainiac. He has to deal with all the disasters. There's a lot going on in this issue, but it does look like a three-part story. Then we jump over to the backup story, which is Death If by Land, Death If by Sea, starring Aquaman. This is written by Bob Rosakus, pencils by Alex Saviuk, inks by Pablo Marco, letters by Shelley LaFurman, and colors by Tom Zucchio, edited by Julius Schwartz. Now, Aquaman has been kidnapped by a Zeta beam that took him to Vortuma. It's a largely underwater planet, so he is dealing with these aliens that look like giant squids called hexapauses, and their arch enemies, the Land Masters. Now, that obviously started last issue, but here Aquaman is trying to stop the Land Masters, ends up getting knocked out when he tries to help his friends escape, and finds himself in a desert, but he quickly discovers, although his powers are fading because he is on dry land for too long, that these Land Masters aren't what they appear, and he chases them to their lair, which is surprisingly underwater, and he realizes that there is a traitor within the hexapauses who has been helping the Land Masters, and the Zeta beam hasn't pulled him back to Earth yet, so he may be stuck here. And we're left with that cliffhanger ending. I would have to say both stories were pretty solid. The Aquaman one was surprisingly fun. They're both aimed at, I would say, middle school readers, but anybody could enjoy this. It was a good all ages book, but it is middle story. It is part 2 of a 3-part series, or at least a 3-part series, I should say. So I think that you'll get the most out of it if you read the entire story arc, but it does a good job catching you up, but there's no resolution on either story, which is a bit of a problem. But the Aquaman one was really good for a backup story, so I was really surprised by that. So I would recommend this. I picked this up for I think $4 at my local comic shop in the back issue bin. Usually this issue goes for about $3 to $10 depending on where you buy it. If you're paying more than that for it in fine condition, I don't think it's worth it. But it was a good read, and if you can find it within that price range, I'd say it's worthy addition to any late Silver Age collection or just fans of Superman. He uses a lot of his powers in this, and a lot happens. A lot more story wedged into one issue than you get in 4 or 5 issues these days. So if you could track it down, I would say it's worth it. The art was great on both stories. Classic superhero art. I was really surprised by the art in the Aquaman one because I wasn't familiar with that artist, but he did a really good job on that story, and Aquaman looks great, and the monsters look really good. The hexapauses are a bit silly, granted, but the Land Masters look really cool. Their outfits are awesome. So if you could track this down, I'd say pick it up. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to help the channel out in different ways, you can pick yourself something up nice from the merch store. You could support me on Patreon or do a one-time donation via Streamlabs, which accepts PayPal. Those links are all in the description. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Action Comics number 530. This is from the original 1938 series, and this issue came out in 1982. And this is the third part of the Planet Eater storyline. Superman and Brainiac are fending off the Planet Eater, but they get sucked into the machine, and that is incredibly dangerous, obviously. Superman's powers are being negated by a lot of the strength of the Planet Eater, so he has a hard time even getting around in there. Plus, it does seem to be designed to defeat him, so it has a lot of weaponry that it can use at its disposal, including hitting him with the rays of a red sun, which temporarily mess with his powers, and he has to kind of do controlled falls, and then he ends up in the brain area of this thing. And Brainiac is also inside, but he is now evil because that's the only way they could figure out how to fight this thing, was to reprogram Brainiac for evil again. And Brainiac is plotting against Superman because there is more at play here. It turns out the Planet Eater is actually creating a planet out of the things that it's been eating to create like sort of a new universe designed around Brainiac's whims. That was its original goal. Now Superman is able to overcome things, and it looks like Brainiac may be trapped, but of course that's not going to last. So is the Earth fully safe from the Planet Eater, or is it going to return at some point in the future? Hard to say. Meanwhile, the backup story is Aquaman, and there's an appearance by the Atom in here as well. Now, where the primary story was written by Marv Wolfman, art by Kurt Swan, inks by Dan Adkins, letters by Milt Snapin, colors by Gene D'Angelo, and edited by Julius Schwartz. The Aquaman and Atom story is written by Rob Rosaski, with pencils by Alex Suviuk, inks by Frank Chiramonte, letters by Shelley Lefferman. Tom Zucchio was the colorist, and Julius Schwartz was the editor. Now, after the defeat of the Landmasters, Aquaman and the Hexapuses have to figure out how to get Aquaman home. They do have like this scientist guy there that can help him, and he's got a laboratory, and Aquaman figures out that he needs an electrical charge because Airwave helped get him here, but that was using an energy charge, and he needs to do that again. He has to go face off with a creature called the Vibrus, which exudes like an eel type electrical attack, and it has to be a really powerful one. And that's where the Atom comes in. The Atom is supposed to pick him up and ends up having to try and help him out, and it's an interesting story. It's a good wrap up to it, but that should have been its own issue. That entire story arc could have been an Adventure Comics story, and it would probably have been more interesting as its own standalone story instead of being told in 3 parts. So while I enjoyed it, I think it was a little weaker than it needed to be just for the sake of space constraints. The main story was pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. I thought the art was solid, the story was good. Good Silver Age book. Superman is very, very powerful in the Silver Age, so the MacGuffins they have to come up with for him to fight are often ludicrously tough. But it was interesting seeing how Brainiac ended up becoming more evil as the story went, and I think it's worth a read. I like the cover a lot. It's really good, and that scene does kind of appear. It's not quite that, but it's very similar in the book because Superman is having to fight so much against the Planet Eater. I thought it was a good issue. I think the storyline was good. I think it has a lot of potential to be adapted to other media as well, because that would actually make a pretty cool animated adventure for Superman. So overall, a good read for all ages. I don't think there's anything here that's going to be a problem for younger readers, especially like middle and high school will be fine with it, and older readers will get some nostalgia out of it. So I found this pretty cheap in a back issue bin. They're not going for a lot of money, and that's a good thing. If you're trying to pick it up, you should be able to find it for about the same price as a new issue, maybe less, and it's worth tracking down. So if you're looking for a good 3-part adventure, this is the conclusion, but they do a pretty good job bringing you up to speed, so you can read it on its own. You'll miss a lot, but you can still do it. So recommended read. That's gonna do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description for my merchandise store, the Patreon, and of course the Streamlabs, which accepts PayPal for one-time donations. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.